Today in the studio, man, I've got a big-time best-selling treat for you. Robert Greene, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brad. My pleasure.
Man, I can't believe when I said we booked Robert Greene, I was excited. I've read the books. Anyone listening, he's a best-selling author known for books on power, strategy, and seduction. He grew up in L.A., graduated from University of California, Berkeley, before finishing his degree in classical studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. You've had 80 jobs, which have included all different kinds of things like construction, translator, editor of magazines, Hollywood movie writer, etc. But the turning point basically is when you pitched one of your famous and first bestsellers, 48 Laws of Power. If anybody hasn't got that book, I highly suggest it. It's on Audible, anywhere you can get books. 48 Laws of Power is not the only one. Mastery, The Art of Seduction, 33 Strategies of War, the 50th Law written with 50 cents. Or 50 cent, singular.
Yeah.
And the Laws of Human Nature, the Daily News, or the Daily Laws. Man, that's quite a list of books, all best-selling authors. What got you? I mean, how did that happen? Out of 80 jobs, just doing a bunch of shit, next thing you know, you're a best-selling author.
It was fairly overnight. You know, I'm kind of a late bloomer, which I try and tell people is a good lesson for you out there who haven't quite figured out what you were meant to do, what your calling is in life. I didn't really figure mine out until I was about 38 years old. I had these 80 different jobs. Basically, I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know what I would be good at. You know, you have to make a living in this world. So I tried journalism, which didn't fit. I tried writing novels, but you can't eat when you're writing a novel because it doesn't pay. Then I came to Hollywood. I tried writing screenplays. And I did these other jobs to sort of finance my life while I did this work. You know, I worked in a detective agency for a while, etc. Anyway, just by luck, I met a man in one of my 80 jobs when I was in Italy who happened to be a book packager. And we were walking along in Venice, Italy, beautiful day. And we were getting along really well. And he asked me if I had any ideas for books. And I just kind of improvised this idea about power. Because you can imagine with 80 different jobs, you've seen all kinds of crap, all kinds of good bosses, but all kinds of terrible bosses, all kinds of power games, all kinds of manipulation. I had seen it all in all gamuts, from the arts to construction to working in hotels. And so I kind of spewed out to him that beautiful sunny day in Venice, this idea that the main thing that motivates people is their desire for power, but they don't want to admit it. They'll admit to the weirdest sort of sexual perversions, but they never want to admit that they're after power because power is such an ugly word. But secretly, that's what they want, and they try and do whatever they can to get it. And I said, at this job that we have here in Italy, they pretend that they're these modern, civilized Italian people. But when I look at them, I see Cesare Borgia. I see the popes from the 16th century, the same power games. People aren't getting beheaded for doing a wrong move now, but they're just being fired. And so I sort of improvised that. He got really excited, and he basically said, I'll pay you to live while you write half the book, and then we'll try and sell it. And sort of the rest was history, you know. So it was a combination of a lot of frustration and stories in my life and ambition that hadn't been realized, and then luck, you know, because if I hadn't met this man, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. I don't know where I would be.
Well, that is true, but we don't necessarily know that is true, meaning maybe if you didn't meet him, you would have met someone else. Like at the end of the day, it could have been where no matter what, we'd be talking today.
Possibly. That's true. I often think about that. I would have maybe found my way to something else.
Yeah, now I'm unlike most people. To me, I want you to define power.
Well, you know, most people, when they think of power, they think of, you know, Henry Kissinger or Donald Trump or President Biden. Think of people in high positions playing all these power games. But I try and bring it down to a very day-to-day basic level. And in your own life, if you look at yourself honestly, and you realize, you know, with relationships with your children, with your spouse, with your colleagues at work, or with your boss, the feeling that you have no control, that you have no power in the dynamic, that people don't listen to you, that they will do whatever they want, that you can't influence them, is to me the worst feeling for a human being. We want a degree of control over our lives. We don't want to be controlling our children, but we want to be able to influence them or our spouse. We want to be able to have some degree of power. Otherwise, we feel helpless. And when we humans feel helpless, we become terribly neurotic. We find passive aggressive ways to get what we want. And so this need for power is a very basic thing that affects every single human being. It's not just the bosses or the presidents or the CEOs. It's you, every individual, no matter what your job. You want some power in your life.
What if someone has, like, let's say, perceived power? Is there a way to test to see? Because one of your laws is don't outperform the master. Now, I am a CEO of a software company, doing, 8, almost 9 figures. So it's pretty successful. So technically I'd be considered in the power position here. And I want people to outperform me. I'm begging people to outperform me. I can't find anybody to outperform me. That's the problem.
Well, the law isn't never outperform your boss. It's never outshine your boss. And so there is a bit of a difference, although the ideas are related. And the idea is, no matter where you work, no matter who your boss is, whether it's Brad Lea, whether it's President Biden or Elon Musk, these bosses have egos. Nobody in this world does not have an ego. I have an ego. You have an ego. We want people, when we're in positions of power, to recognize that we deserve the position that we have attained. Right? We have a sense of pride.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes along who makes us feel insecure about the position that we hold, if we get the idea that they don't respect us or that they think that they're better than we are, then that triggers insecurity. Now, maybe you're not so insecure, and that's a great thing. And maybe if you met somebody like that, it wouldn't bother you. And I'm a bit like that as well. I want people who have a lot of self-initiative, who will contribute something and will make my life easier. And a lot of people can't reach that level. But you never know who your boss is. And going on the assumption that he or she is so secure about themselves that they don't care no matter what you do is dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. I have been fired from several of my 80 jobs because I gave the boss a feeling that I was better than her in this one case, that I was smarter, that I was better at the job, and that maybe in the end I was angling after her position, which wasn't true, and I got fired. So you never know. And that's the thing about the 48 laws of power. I'm opening your eyes to how people think, to what really goes on, because your bosses will smile and say, I love your work, I think you're wonderful. And then tomorrow you're fired and you don't understand why. So it's a kind of a way of decoding the little secret games that go on behind closed doors in offices or anywhere.
If someone listening right now says, hey man, I'd like some power. I know there's 48 laws. We don't need to go through them all, but what would be the top most important 3 things you can do to start garnering a little power for yourself?
Well, one of the most important things is a law that I say, learn to keep people dependent on you. So normally you think in your job that what matters is that you're likable, that people love you, that they think you're a great person, that you think you're nice. But that's not how the world operates. It doesn't matter whether people like you. It matters whether they need you, right? If someone needs you, if you are the only person who can do this job and do it well, and to fire you will cause all kinds of problems, then your job is secure. But if they don't need you, in the end, if they can replace you with somebody younger and cheaper, they will do it in an instant, no matter how much they like you. So your task in your career is to figure out a way to make it so that you can't be replaced. And, there are various strategies for that. So you enter a job, and if you're so just thinking narrowly about the one thing that you have to do, then that kind of limits the need that people have of you. But if you can kind of spread yourself out in several directions and inveigle your way into different kind of jobs that you can do, different positions, different responsibilities, then to uproot you is like uprooting a tree. It causes all these other things to come out of the ground, and it's very dangerous. So I talk in that particular law about how you can make people dependent on you, which is extremely important, I think, in the world today, because realistically, in the world, it's not the same as when my father was working. He worked for 40 years for the same company, and there was a sense of loyalty going in both directions. Now there's very little loyalty in any kind of large company or corporation. So if you don't secure your position in some way, if you don't create this need for you, then you're in a very insecure position. They'll get rid of you at some point, and it's very painful. So that's an extremely important law.
I can see that one being applied on a regular basis. It's funny. It's funny. There might be people that have never read your book that are accidentally applying the laws of power. There's employees that get in certain situations where they do certain things a certain way where ultimately, if you get rid of them, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to think maybe they all read your book.
Well, some of this is kind of intuitive. It's kind of common sense, So you asked me if there were several laws. There's another law that I would mention, which is appeal to people's self-interest, never to their gratitude. So if you want people to do something for you, it's not that they like you, that they're grateful for what you've done for them. It's you have to appeal to their self-interest. Self-interest is what makes the world go round. So your boss or your colleagues, they have their own needs, their own desires, their own problems. Most people in the world today are way too busy. I know myself, I work too hard. I've got too many things going on, right? So if somebody came to me, I'm not advocating this for anybody to contact me, but if somebody came along saying, Robert, I can save you time, and here's how I can do it, I would hire that person in a flash. They're appealing to what I need. And most people go around in this world thinking of what they need and of how great they are at certain things. And they try and impress you with how good they are at this, that, or the other. And they're not thinking about what Brad needs. They're thinking about what they need. If I got into your mind and I said, Brad has scheduling issues. He's not, he's always late. He's confused. He doesn't know what's coming up the next day or the next day. And I came to you and I came with a really kick-ass way to organize your life. That's appealing to your self-interest and to your needs. It's a whole different way of thinking, which you need to have in the work world. You need to be thinking inside other people's mind and their perspective and what's going on with them, their insecurities and their needs, as opposed to always just thinking first about yourself.
Yeah. When you say kind of loyalty is rare nowadays, I would agree. But I'm surprised that's the 49th law. Let's write the 49th law of power. And that is to gain loyalty, because I can tell you right now, if I'm in a room full of 15 people, whether I have the most money or not, if I've got the loyalty of the people in that room more so than anybody else, I hold the power. Agree?
Yes, completely. And there is a law of power that deals with that as well. It's called work on the hearts of minds and of others. I don't remember which number. It's in the 40s. But the idea is you need a base of power. So if you have a company and there are 20 people that are working beneath you and 10 of them like you and are loyal, but then there are 5 kind of disgruntled types and there's kind of 5 who are sort of wishy-washy, you're in a heap of trouble, because that discontent can spread, and discontented people tend to cause disproportionate amount of trouble in any company. So you want to have that number get up to 15 or 16. And in the military, which I use a lot in my research, they know this. It's called esprit de corps. It's the spirit of the army, of the spirit of the service. And if 15 people in your company feel a tremendous bond with Brad because he treats them well, and there are a couple discontented, the 15 can now police them, and they're going to be the ones that create this kind of spirit within the company where you're going to want to be loyal to Brad. So I completely agree with that. And in other books, I've written a lot of material about how you can create this kind of loyalty, this profound loyalty in people. But it's extremely important because having discontented people in your office is just begging for all kinds of trouble. And you'll notice in the work world or in celebrity or in politics, if somebody can be very powerful because they intimidate people because they're the kind of boss that's yelling and screaming and putting people down. The moment one bad thing happens to them, one bad publicity thing, and their job is kind of hanging in the balance, all those people will come out of the woodwork saying terrible things about their boss and will dump on him or her. You know, it's happening to Governor Cuomo in New York, for instance. You look great and powerful. He's kind of boss who doesn't treat his employees very well, people working for him. And now that he's not looking so good, they're all coming out of the woodwork and they're showing that they're not really that loyal to him. So that's one of the reasons why you want that kind of a broad base of support in case things go a little bit south, which they inevitably will. You have the support of the people working for you.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in learning that 48 laws of power, learn and master them, and you will more than likely get a lot farther in life. If someone were to study that book like the Bible, like a pastor, studies a Bible, are they going to be in a position of power for sure if they implement it? Or are these there's some timing and luck involved as well? Or if they just freaking dial in every single one of those laws and apply them, next thing you know, they'll be in some position of power?
Well, everybody is different. In this world, you need to have some basic social skills. You need to have a degree of empathy and a degree of ability to, as I said, get inside the mindset of other people. And if you don't possess that at all, if you're someone who's so self-centered and narcissistic, then the laws, you're going to hit a wall. You're not going to be able to progress very far.
Yeah. So
but if you're able, if you have some self-awareness, if you're able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not really perfect. I have some flaws. I have some faults. I need to work on myself. Then the laws will have a lot greater effect. And I can tell you that most people in this world enter the work world or in the work world tend to be naive. I know I was naive. I wrote the book. And what I mean by naivete is you're not aware that other people in the work world aren't so sweet and nice as they pretend to be. They wear a mask and they can be cloaking. They could be turning against. They could be somebody who might betray you in a jiffy, or they might be someone who's scheming for power, or you don't understand your boss. And so a lot of our problems come from we're not really aware of kind of the darker side of human nature, right? So this is a book that's going to open your eyes and make you less naive. So you may not become Elon Musk or Brad Lea or whomever, but you're going to get a lot further than you are getting along now. You'll stop making mistakes, and the mistakes can really kind of hurt you emotionally and take years to get over. So when I got fired from that job because I worked too hard and I was outshining my boss, and I got fired, I never knew why she fired me. I thought it was something personal, whatever. I realized it years later. But after getting fired, it was very painful because I was confused, and it caused some kind of damage to me. Not that I'm that sensitive, but for several months, it kind of really weighed on me. Months where I could have been writing another book or whatever. So you don't want to be constantly stepping on your own way, tripping yourself over. You want a smoother path in life, and I can guarantee you, if you read the 48 Laws of Power, you will have a smoother path in life.
I think the Laws of Human Nature is another one that they should read right after that or right before that, because I believe if you are a master at human nature and you realize why people do what they do, why they think what they think, how they think it, the just laws of human nature, just the human nature in us. If you can be really aware of human nature, I think you can avoid a lot of shit.
Well, that's why I wrote the book. I do consulting work where people come to me with their problems, and people all different gamuts, people who are bosses and CEOs, athletes, people in the entertainment industry, et cetera, et cetera. And I began noticing a trend, this is about 8 or 9 years ago, where people can be very powerful. They're very good at their job. They're technically smart. They understand the world of finance or sports or whatever, but they don't understand people. They don't understand basic psychology. And they would come to me with their problems. Like, I hired this business partner who I thought was really good, and we were going to get along together, and we were going to kick ass and make the company much more productive. And ended up this guy is actually angling to control the company and steal it away from me. And I had no idea. What do I need to do? And I tell people, well, the best defense is to recognize these types before they get involved in your life. So let's back up a little bit and let's try and figure out where you went wrong. What were the signs that they were like this, right? What were the signs that they were full of envy or insecurity? So next time you're in the position of looking for a business partner, you're going to pay more attention to their character and not to their glittering resume. Whether they're a good person, whether they're hardworking, whether they're diligent, whether they can take criticism. So I noticed this kind of piling up this trend, and I thought, what is going on? Is there some kind of problem in this world right now, or is it just like random? And I decided that a lot of it, unfortunately, comes from social media and from the internet and things like that, where we're all paying so much more attention to our phones, spending so much time with our screens, that we're not interacting with people enough. And our social skills are weakening, are degrading. Because in the past, when you didn't have these devices, you were spending so much more time interacting with people. And so being good in social, having social skills is a skill. And it's something you develop by constantly interacting with people and constantly understanding their psychology and the mistakes you've made in thinking about them. So I think that it's an increasing problem that we're facing in the world today. And that's really why I wrote the book. It's kind of the ultimate book for decoding what's really going on behind the masks that people wear. What are they really thinking about? Why they pretend to be this certain person, but what are they concealing from you? You know, how to read their body language, for instance. How to know whether someone is an envious type before you get mixed up with them. How to recognize those people who are way too aggressive or passive aggressive, who are going to make your life miserable. That kind of thing.
So what does your day look like? What do you do? Like, you wake up, I mean, you're a full-time author now. You don't have a job other than author, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So like you might just wake up, freaking feel like sleeping a little longer if you want. You could get up, you could decide to go to the beach for 6 hours just to freshen up the old mind. What does your day look like?
Well, unfortunately, I'm very disciplined and I work very, very hard because I do a lot of research for my books and I'm very motivated. I don't rest on my laurels. So if my last book is doing well, I now go to my next book. I don't think, well, I can kind of coast on this one. I know this book has got to be better than the last one. I have to outperform my last book. It has to be the best book of all. So I'm extremely motivated to constantly improve and constantly make my work better. So it makes me work a lot. So I get up pretty much at the same time in the morning, basically around 7 or so. And I meditate. I meditate every morning. I've been doing it for almost 11 years now because I find, particularly in the world today, having the ability to focus and the ability to kind of drop all the crap from the day before is extremely important for me mentally and emotionally. And then, you know, I exercise every single day. I had a stroke a couple years ago, which has kind of made it a little harder, but I have a special bicycle that I bought, a recumbent bike, and I go riding up into the hills that I live in. It's an incredible exercise every day. I either do that or I lift weights. So that's part of my schedule. And then I get to work, you know, and then I do my 4 hours of writing, which is about all I can stand. So it's pretty regimented, boring life, if I had to be honest. Yeah, but I find it exciting.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. I mean, it's obviously exactly what you want to be doing or you wouldn't be doing it. That's what I call the pinnacle of success, is when you can basically do whatever the F you want, when you want, with whom you want.
Completely.
How many celebrity and powerful connections did you make through the book?
I made a lot. You know, you know, I can't name all of them because they're anonymous. You know, they don't want to have it publicized that they're using consulting with me. But you know, obviously, a lot of rappers and hip hop artists, 50 Cent, Drake, you know, people like that. They've come to me, and I've had relationships with them. Then a lot of basketball players that I know that I've talked to and helped, and basketball coaches. I'm kind of do some consulting with some NBA coaches right now.
Do you make
and then
do you make more money on books or consulting?
On books, the consulting work it takes up a lot of time, and I charge a lot because my time is very important to me.
Yeah. Plus, you've already established your dominance. You've already positioned yourself as power. Write a book about power, and automatically people are going to put you there. That should be rule.
Yeah,
that should be rule 50. Write a book about it.
It is. Yeah, and I did. But the thing is,
the 50th.
I feel bad because we did 50 Cent. The thing is, a lot of people come to me who can't afford it, and I feel really bad. And in the past, 12, 13 years ago, I would try and respond to them and help them. I just don't have the time anymore. I'm just way too busy. And I enjoy the consulting work, but I enjoy writing books much more. So I generally, particularly when I'm in production mode, which I am right now, I cut back on the consulting work.
So you pretty much do whatever you want now. Pretty much, I'm assuming, and I love the work ethic, but I'm assuming any book that you come out with is going to be a bestseller, right? Just because. Now, people might talk shit about it afterwards, but at least it's going to be a bestseller. Someone has to buy a shit ton of books before they can say it's shit or not.
Well, I don't get too many people thinking my books are shit.
No,
because I work so hard at them. You know, I mean, the lesson is, if you're really, really good at what you do, if you put the time and the effort into something, then you're inevitably going to get the results that you desire. I tell people, this is kind of a lesson that's a bit harsh, but I talk to them about Albert Einstein, the most brilliant man who ever lived, the most successful scientist probably ever. You know, we could argue Darwin, but maybe I think Einstein. This man spent 20 years thinking about one problem, and he came up with two theories of relativity. In 20 years, he'd be walking in Zurich, and all he would be doing is thinking about this one problem. If you add up the hours that went into it, it's an incredible amount. And look what it led to. You know, it led to the two greatest discoveries in the history of science. If you put your mind to it, if you think about something deeply enough, if you work hard enough at something, it will show in the results that you have. But when you don't think about something deeply, when you write a book kind of half-assed just to make money, and you write it in 2 months, you know, and just kind of scribble it out, you know, but you got a nice kind of fancy cover on it and some good publicity. Eventually people catch on, they read it and they go, this is kind of thin. And then maybe your name is big and it sells a little bit, but word gets around that the book isn't really that deep or that interesting. It shows in the end. And I put so much effort into it. I think so deeply because I'm trying to help people with the loss of human nature. I'm trying to really, really help them, not just dealing with other people, but with yourself, understanding who you are, understanding your own dark side, understanding your own aggressive impulses and how to handle them. If you are thinking so deeply about what people need, I don't think I'm going to get that much people saying the book is shit. There were a few people who were a bit disappointed about the length of the book. I understand it's not a short book, but most 99% of the people responded very positively because the book is really going to help you.
Oh yeah, I was recommended the book 100 times from 100 people. I read the book. I've read several of your books. I'm reading all of your books now. The one I didn't read or even know that you wrote was the Seduction, the Art of Seduction. But before I talk about that, what is your process to do research? Because again, your books are not light reading. They are like intensive where, man, you are giving, you know, case study after case study, example of example, and it's filled with history. Are you a history buff?
I definitely am. I love history. Always have. I love ancient history. There are periods of history that basically anything in the past fascinates and obsesses me. I don't know why. It's probably genetic. But the main thing is, I don't want to just write an academic book about power, human nature, or seduction. I want to entertain the reader. I want them to have some fun. That's how you seduce a reader into reading the book and to learning what you're trying to teach them. So I have to have everything with stories. So you're not just reading about never outshine the master. I'm telling you a really weird story about a king who is somebody underneath him who was like his finance minister, throws a party for the king to try and honor him. But the party is so successful and people love it so much that they're paying more attention to the finance minister who threw the party than to the king. And the next day, the finance minister is thrown in prison and spends the rest of his life there, never knowing what happened. Well, he outshone King Louis XIV. And that story just hits you in the head. You go, wow, yeah, that's true. You outshine your master, you're going to get in trouble. So to find these stories, I do massive amounts of research. For the 48 Laws of Power, I probably read 200, 300 books for research. For the human nature, I read even more. I take extensive amounts of note cards. These are my note cards for this chapter that I'm writing right now. Wow. That's just part of them. And with the note cards, I'm able to organize all my thoughts and all the stories. But not just spewing my own ideas about the world, but backing it up with research, with facts, with things from history, gives it a certain weight that you wouldn't have if you just kind of threw out your own ideas about the world. So that's why I do a lot of research.
How important do you think the stories are? Does human nature make people attract better when there's stories?
Well, it's the child in us all. It's what I often tell people: when you were a child, you've had a sensation when you were 2 years old that probably set the course for your whole life, where usually your dad, would put you on his shoulders and carry you around and swing you around and take you, and you didn't know where he was doing, and you were laughing hysterically. The idea that you're being carried along and you don't know what the other person is going to do to you is immensely pleasurable to humans. It's why we watch movies. What's going to happen next? Is that character actually a serial killer? What's happening around the corner? What is that we can't see right now? The idea of suspense or surprise is wired into our brains. It makes us pay attention. If my reader is thinking, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know who the villain or the hero is of the story. I better read more. So they turn the next page, and they return the next page after that. So telling a story is a way to engage people's interest and to engage them emotionally. And when you read a story, if it's told well, you tend to identify with the people. If you make it dramatic and emotional, you identify with them, whether they're good people or bad people. And that moment where they identify, something is happening to them. The walls that you normally have in your brain to being influenced or to new ideas kind of lowers down as you get inside a story and you sort of identify with the character. Now I have room to kind of influence you and to kind of plant seeds of new possible ways of looking at the world. I can promise you that my books would not sell nearly as well, maybe not even at all, if I did not include stories. I put a lot of attention and time into making them entertaining.
How long on average does it take you to write a book?
I'm slowing down. I'm getting older. When I was in my prime, when I was a young buck, 38 years old, I could write the 48 Laws of Power in 2 years. Then the Art of Seduction took me 3 years. Then the three Strategies of War took me 3.5 years. Then Mastery took me 4 years. Then Human Nature took me 5 years. So I'm slowing down, because I'm getting older. But that's kind of the usual time frame here.
How much of just the writing part? Because it sounds like you do a lot of research. Is it 80% research, 20% writing?
It's probably it's a good question. If you added up all the hours, that would probably be kind of more about what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because in
the beginning, it's all research, and then when I'm writing, it's all writing, but the research goes on quite a long time. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm writing a book. It's going to come out one of these days. It's called The Hard Way. I've put it up for pre-sale. I've sold like 8,000 copies. Everyone's now going, where's the book? Where's the book? And I'm like, dude, I told you it was a pre-order because I haven't finished it yet. I'm on chapter like 8, and everything you just said resonated with me because people kept saying, dude, just give it to a ghostwriter. I said, no, I'm not going to give it to a ghostwriter because I'm basically trying to put my thoughts in here, but I don't want to rush it. And I want to make sure that when the book comes out, if you don't like it, you don't like what I said. It's not what someone else said, because I think I'll have a problem with that.
Right.
What do you think about having, because there's a lot of people that want to be a Robert Greene, right? I'm not coming out with a book because I want to be an author, but if I come out with my book and it saw critic or, great praise and everyone's like, holy moly, this is the greatest book ever, which is just obviously lucid dream. But if that were to happen and now I could be an author, dude, I could freaking chill like you. Even though you're busting your ass, you're chilling. It looks like you live a good life. You live in LA. You live with your girlfriend who's making films. Are you going to make films?
Well, the people are trying to make films. Like right now, 50 Cent, we're trying to do a film version of the 50th Law, the book that we did. A lot of people want to do the 48 Laws of Power into a film, singing about it. But, I kind of hated Hollywood. I didn't like the whole vibe here. I didn't like the fakeness of it. I'm kind of a real type of person. But
yeah,
I still have it in my blood that I would like to write something like that or a screenplay. So it's not out of the question when this is finished and I can relax a little bit and maybe write something like that. So that could happen, yeah.
Hey, and you mentored Ryan Holiday, yeah?
I did indeed, yeah. One of my proudest things I've ever done.
Yeah, and now look, another freaking best-selling author.
He outshone the master, I think, in some ways.
Did you fire him? Did you fire him? Get rid of him?
No, never. Because when he worked for me, he hadn't written a book at all. I taught him the method of doing research with the cards. I taught him how to find books, etc. And then I got him a job. I was working on the board of directors for American Apparel at the time, and I got him a high-level position there. And he sort of saw the world of power up close. And then he wrote a book based on those experiences, and it kind of launched his career. But I've helped him along the way. I always read his books first and give him advice, and I also get advice from him. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship. I tell people that kind of mentor-apprentice relationship, if you get a good one, is good for both sides, because I get to connect to someone younger who sees the world through, he's 32 or something like that, now through those eyes, which I don't have anymore. I don't understand what young people, their mentality anymore. I'm a dinosaur and I understand it. But with my connection to Ryan, I get a window into how young people think and what's going on in the digital world, etc. And then it's emotionally satisfying. It's like the son or daughter you didn't have, and so I get to see him grow and I get to see him expand his empire. So I'm very proud of the success he's had. I don't feel insecure about it, even though some of his books are selling better than my own. I have to admit.
Really?
But I'm very he's more prolific than I am. So in the end, he's going to outpace me. But I'm very, very proud. I'm very happy for him because he works very hard.
Well, I haven't read his books yet, so I doubt he's outperformed you. But you'd know better than I would, man. I just wish like I had someone to tell me that shit. What I'm doing is I'm basically sitting down at a computer I started with a blank piece of paper, and I just started talking about stories that I've encountered and what the lesson was, and the whole idea of the book is, this is the shit I've learned the hard way so you don't have to. Because at the end of the day, I mean, when you get to 50, 60, 70 years old, you start to realize there's certain rules and lessons in life that you're going to learn no matter who you are, and they're all pretty much universal. And you're going to learn them the hard way 9 times out of 10. So I'm just laying those out with stories. Any tips you can give me to get finished quicker or finish with a stronger book?
Well, what's the percentage of it that you think you've already written? I mean, how much is left? Give me an idea.
I have 8 chapters, and it's and the
And
book and the book has 17 total.
So you're about halfway. Well,
But I can go back. I can go back. That's another thing. I don't know if you ever do this. Do you ever read your chapters? Because I'll sit down, I'll come in and I'll say, babe, I got to be gone. I got to finish this book. I was supposed to I thought I could write a book in a couple of weeks. I didn't even think about research because I'm telling you what I know, so I don't have to research what I know. It's not a thing that needs to be researched, but I thought I could write it in a couple of weeks. And every time I come in on a Saturday, I start with chapter 1 and I reread it. And then next thing you know, I start to add to it because there's so much more I want to say that I didn't. So now I spend the whole day and all I did was beefed up chapter 1.
Yeah, well, my rule of thumb, but each person is different. So it kind of is, your own character and psychology. I rewrite my first draft always sucks. Inevitably, if people read my first draft, they would never read any of my books. I rework and I rework and I rework till probably there's like 18, 20 drafts of the same chapter. And I don't move on to the next chapter until I feel that the chapter is solid. So I don't have that problem of going back. But it means that I spend probably too long on perfecting that chapter. So I'm not perfect. But that's my own kind of neurotic nature where I don't like to leave something until I feel like it's really, really good. But you mentioned something that sounds a bit problematic to me. Are you writing every day or are you only getting able to get to the book on Saturday?
Yeah, I only get to the book on occasion because I'm running a company. I'm busy. So what I think I'm going to do is, hey, I'll write tonight, but I never get to it. So usually it's once a week I'm able to go in there and add to it.
That's the problem. That's the source of your problem. Because to write a book, there's an intensity involved where as you're in it every single day, the thoughts and ideas start coming to you and you improve it. So you're like taking a shower. You think, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Or you're eating your breakfast or you're taking a walk. Things come to you. So my recommendation to you would be and if I were there, I would really enforce it, to dedicate an hour every day. So don't try and do 8 hours on Saturday. It's not going to work because your head's not into it. You have to now try and work really hard to get your mind into the spirit of it. You're wasting time. And then you spend 4 or 5 hours and you didn't get enough done. Try and dedicate, if you can't do an hour, at least a half hour. Where you take your notes and you look over them and you look and you plan what you're going to do the next day. So, like, you've heard of Ernest Hemingway, one of the greatest novelists of all time. When he wrote, his secret was he would write and then he would stop halfway in a sentence. He knew the next thing he wanted to write, but he stopped right there so that when he came back to it the next day, he knew exactly where to pick up. He didn't have any moment of blankness. He knew he could complete his thought and then on and on and on. You want to develop that kind of momentum where even if it's just half an hour, you have some focused thought, you took some notes, it leaves you in a place where the next day you can go a little further. Try and get in the habit of doing at least a half hour. I would say an hour because half hour, you're going to end up whittling it down to 20 minutes, So try for an hour, and if you can't make it, okay. But get into it every single day so that you develop some momentum so it's in your head. And you'll be surprised how faster the book will come because it's like trying to swim against a current, Every day, every Saturday, you're like, the water's coming at you. You can't get into the book and you're swimming really hard. You're not getting anywhere. If you do it every single day, you're kind of moving with the current. You can go further and faster. And you may not end up putting in any more hours because you're only doing an hour a day, but it's focused. And then Saturday, you don't have to spend 6 hours. You can spend time with your children or whatever, or your wife or whatever. So try and make it a daily thing. That's my main advice to you.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to mention you in the book. Who knows? Maybe it'll sell a few copies and change some lives. If you could pick any year or any era that you love, which would it be? Like back in what days would you think Robert Greene would fit the best?
Well, in college, I studied classics. My major was ancient Greek and Latin. I was particularly attracted to ancient Greek. I don't know why. These are things you can't really explain. I was a kid and I just was fascinated with the myths, with the history, with the literature. And so when I studied it at Berkeley and then Wisconsin, it was weird because I felt like I felt like I in a previous life I had been there because I picked up the language really quickly and it's a hard language to learn. It's a dead language. So I'm obsessed with that world. I find it incredibly fascinating. It's like the childhood of mankind. We each had our childhood and we think very fondly about it. We have these intense memories. Everything was more kind of alive. We have incredible stories and things that happened to us. Well, ancient history, for me, Greece, is like the childhood of mankind. It's like people were just starting to think about the world. It was the beginning of science and philosophy. And there was this kind of fascination with everything. People were opening their eyes and thinking new, interesting thoughts. And I would love to have gone back to that period and to witness the incredible drama of the Peloponnesian War and Pericles and to see Socrates in his academy and to meet Plato. That would be like a nonstop mental orgasm for me. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There are other periods too, but that would be my favorite.
So back then they would believe in Zeus and Thor and all of the Greek mythology. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, looking thousands of years later, where hey, there's it says you were in your Wikipedia that I read. It said you were a Zen Buddhist practicing, or like I'm interested in figuring out like out of all your reading and knowledge, what are we thinking as far as religion? Is there a God? And like again, Greeks thought Zeus existed. Well, apparently not. Is 5,000 years from now people going to be laughing because we believed in Jesus or Buddha or any of it? When is the like? What do you think of religion? What is your thoughts?
Well, I think religion is extremely important, and I think the loss of religion in the modern world is a devastating blow to us all. I think it's the source of a lot of people's depression. I think it's the source of why people turn to drugs. They feel lost. You need to have a sense of purpose in your life. You need to feel that there's something higher in this universe than yourself, some greater power, and connecting to that. It existed for thousands of years, and people gravitated to that for a reason. It's not science, I understand, and some of it seems to our sophisticated minds childish, but it fulfilled a very deep, important human need. And I think we're missing it today. Now, in Buddhism, there's no real sense of a God. It's a different kind of religion. So it's not like that Buddha is this God that lives forever up in the sky or something. It's more like it's inside of you, and you're searching for enlightenment, and you're learning, trying to follow his path. And in following his path, you become enlightened, and that's the goal. And I tell you, it's helped me immensely in my life, the kind of calmness that it can bring me. I'm not perfect. I still get emotional, upset about things, but it has helped me immensely. I probably wouldn't even be alive right now if I wasn't for my meditation practice.
Wow.
Because I have like high blood pressure and I'm a very intense person, and it just kind of calms me down, and it makes me aware of other things going on in life that I'm not so important, that there are things that I can connect to something much more powerful than myself. So I think that a lot of people in the world today look down on religion as if it's part of our childish, primitive past. And I don't think that at all. I have tremendous respect for all religions. And of course, there are bad people inside every religion. There were bad Christians and there are good Christians. There are bad Muslims and they're not bad Muslims. There are good Jews and there are bad Jews. But in general, I think religion is extremely important to kind of ground us and make us not so arrogant, and to give us a degree of humility about our place in the world. That's just me. But I'm not proselytizing. I don't I don't try and beat people over the head with it. It's my own belief.
Yeah, I'm let's say seeking right now. I'm looking into things. I'm asking questions. I don't know what I believe yet. So we'll leave it at that. That's an excellent point. But here's my question. The Art of Seduction. Now, number one, what made you write that book? And I noticed that book was written before that program came out called Speed Dating or whatever, where the whole pickup artist became. So you were actually before all that. Do you think you inspired those people?
I know that they read my book, like the guy who wrote the book, The Game, Neil Strauss.
Yeah, that guy.
He likes The Art of Seduction. So it played a role. But The Art of Seduction isn't really about the pickup game. I'm kind of not so into that world as much because I find it a little bit soulless. I know people think, well, God, Robert Greene, you write about manipulation. Your books are very soulless. I don't think so. The Art of Seduction is a very playful book. It's about men seducing women, women seducing men. It's not just about men doing their pickup games. And it involves the psychology of how you make another person fall in love with you, how you make another person fall under your spell. And so it's not just sexual seductions. It's social seductions. It's political seductions. It's marketing seductions. It's all in that book. What is the psychology of influence? Because anytime you're selling a product or you're selling a podcast, it is a form of seduction, right? The psychology is the same. How you lure people into your idea, into your world with the lure of something pleasurable and exciting. And how once they're inside, you kind of get a little bit of room to kind of maneuver in the way you want. And they have power over you because it's a back and forth dynamic. So it's much more than just going to a bar and picking up a woman. In fact, I don't even go into that. I'm going into how you make yourself a more naturally seductive person in the work world and in the sexual realm. I don't deny you're not going to be using it.
What kind of research did you do for that book?
I hear where you're getting at. Well, in my 20s, I was kind of, a bit wild, I must admit. And I have these types of seducers, and one of them is the rake, which is a man who's kind of doing a lot of seducing. And I admit that in my 20s, I was definitely a rake. So I had some personal experience to draw upon. Also, I knew some people when I was very young who kind of mentored me a little bit, people who were really, really good in that world. But then I did a lot of reading. I still had to do research for it, like book reading, not going out and seducing women in bars. I had to read books about history, about Cleopatra, about Duke Ellington, about Casanova, about all the great seducers in history, John F. Kennedy, etc., and what was behind their seduction. So it was a mix of some of my own very pleasant memories of my youthful days as a rake, and also some heavy book research. But I must admit that was the most fun book I've ever had to write.
I was going to ask, what was your favorite book? Was that it?
Well, the 48 Laws of Power would be my favorite because it launched me, and it just kind of came out of me. But The Art of Seduction would be a close second, or maybe even tied for first, because it was fun. And I can honestly say the next book, The 33 Strategies of War, was one of the worst and hardest books to write. So I know for sure that seduction is on a much higher level of deep for fun.
And now you got another book coming out in the fall, don't you?
Yeah. It's basically, it's called The Daily Laws. And what we've done is it's a kind of a calendar where each day is giving you some advice. And some of it are passages from my 5 books, not the 50th law, but from 5 of my books. And some of it is from passages from podcasts like this one and essays that I've written. And there's some new material in there, things from the new book that I'm writing. And it's kind of organized. So the first 3 months are about mastering your career, how to get better at your particular craft. And the next 3 months are about how to deal with power situations in your office, with manipulative people, with your boss, with scheming colleagues, etc. The next 3 months have to deal with with seduction and persuasion and influence, how to get people to fall under your spell, to have more persuasive powers in life. And the last 3 months are basically about human nature and how to understand people. And the last month in particular is how to deal with your own fear of death and your own fear of mortality, which is an important part of all of my books.
Dude, it sounds like an MBA in life.
It is. It is. It's, it's a combination of material from my other books, but we've carefully picked it so that you kind of every day it's going to make you think. And, you're supposed to read it in that order, that you can read it however you want to. And if you buy the book in October, you're obviously going to start in October. But it's going to kind of ground you in how I think and make certain aspects of your life flow a little more easily, I hope. But that's sort of what the book is about. It's to inspire you and give you kind of daily instruction.
Is there any way to pre-order it for people that when they hear this, they want it, or do they just wait until fall?
I think it's pre-orderable on Amazon. I think we've announced it. I have to check. It would have been announced pre-orders. If it happened, it would have been just this last week. But I believe it's either now or very soon you'll be able to pre-order it.
Have you ever considered making courses? My success has come from developing an interactive training technology that allows me to make interactive videos that basically teach people shit. And that what you just said, that because you said 3 months of this, a 3-month curriculum, and then a 3-month curriculum, a 1 year to change your life, featuring Robert Greene on all of these topics, which is basically a virtual course of that book. Have you ever thought about that?
Has anyone ever said that you kind of look like Mike Ditka?
hey,
you do.
I'm starting to look like Mike Ditka. That's why I'm heading back to the gym.
No, it's a compliment. He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
He has a mustache, though, Robert.
Now he does.
Yeah, I've never had a mustache, but that's the first time anyone's ever told me that. You know what I hear a lot of? Kurt Warner.
What?
I don't know why Kurt Warner, but I've never heard Mike Ditka.
The way you smile and everything, kind of look like Mike Ditka. You used to see him on the television a lot, He was a great football player and coach. So it's a compliment.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'll take it. So have you ever thought about doing a course or no?
Well, the thing is, life is short. I mean, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm already in my 60s, I have to admit. And I almost 2 years ago, I had a stroke. I nearly died. So I'm aware of the clock ticking, and I want to write these certain books to get out before I die. And if I did a course like you're talking about, I want to spend time on it. I just don't want to do it, just to make money. I really, really want to help people and make it as scientific and efficient and effective as possible. Other people have come to me with that idea, and I've let them develop it because I don't have the time to do the work. And I didn't really like what they did. It wasn't strong enough for me. So it could happen in the future, but I'd have to be able to carve out the time. And it has to be me. It has to be something different from the normal kind of courses out there, and something that reflects my own kind of spirit. It's a possibility.
Well, maybe I'll approach you later down the road. I'll take the project over because I'm going to just virtualize you and your thoughts. So when I'm done, you'll love the course. But that's awesome, man.
Well, I'd love that. Yeah, we'll stay in touch.
I'll tell you right now, if you guys aren't going out and grabbing these books, all of them, you're crazy. If not, you better go get 48 Laws of Power. You better go get Mastery, and you better go get The Art of Seduction. Now, before I let you go, we're right at 59 minutes. I wanted to know, and especially for people in the audience, because a stroke's a pretty major thing. So, number one, I'm glad you're freaking all right. But what did it feel like to have that, and what would you say to somebody to avoid that?
You want to avoid it, I tell you, it's not fun. Please do whatever you can to avoid it. It was weird. I mean, I was with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. We were driving. I was getting into my car to drive. We just had lunch, and I'm pulling out of the curb, and I'm starting to drive here in Los Angeles. And suddenly she's like yelling at me, pull over, pull over, pull over. I'm like, what? I'm just driving. And then I blank out. I don't know what happened. I basically became unconscious. and she called 911. And fortunately, they were very nearby. They got me, and fortunately, the hospital was very nearby. I was in a coma for several hours. And if she hadn't been in the car, I'd be dead right now, because it was the quick action saved me. And if for some reason the the ambulance hadn't been close enough, I'd have brain damage, because you only have so much time that your brain can't have oxygen. So they got to me. They did some work on me while I was in the ambulance. They got me to the hospital. And the next thing I know, I'm like sitting in a gurney in this weird room with all these other gurneys on top of me. And I'm like screaming in Spanish. I'm starting to yell in Spanish. I know Spanish because I've studied it, and I've lived in Spain. But for some reason, something went haywire in my brain. And I suddenly began talking Spanish to everyone. And I was yelling, suéltame, suéltame, tengo que... Oh, I had to go to the bathroom. And I didn't know what happened. I had no idea what happened to me. I had been unconscious for several hours. And then then finally I find out what happened. I'm in the hospital. And I had the kind of stroke, which is actually a little better to have if you're going to have a stroke, which you should never have, on the right side of my brain, which affected the left side of my body. So basically, the left side of my body was essentially paralyzed. It had no strength. I could move my arm, but barely. I could move my leg, but barely, not enough to walk or do anything. And if you have a stroke on the other side, on the left side, it affects your language and your cognitive abilities, which for someone like me would be a lot worse, because there would be no more books for me, right? But I am someone who likes to exercise. I would swim all the time. I would bike into the hills. I would take long walks. That's all gone, you know?
Yeah, but still, it wasn't a lack of exercise. It wasn't any of that, because you were already active.
Oh, so what brought on the stroke?
Yeah.
Well, it's a series of things. It's a long story. I won't bore you with all the details, but I've been walking in the park nearby, and I got like a wasp or a bee sting on my neck right here. And about a week later, it got massively inflamed to the point where I just couldn't. It was horrifying. The itch was so strong. I went to the hospital, and they put me on prednisone, which is a form of cortisone, which kind of increases your blood pressure, right? Now, I already had blood pressure issues, and I already had probably high cholesterol, and I had just finished The Laws of Human Nature, and it was a very stressful book, and I was very depleted. And then when I had my stroke, the blood clot occurred exactly where the sting was in my neck, right? So I believe that the sting kind of activated a bunch of cholesterol in that area and caused the blood clot right there. The doctors tend to believe that that's probably what happened. So there's luck, bad luck, and there's also background circumstances, stress, cholesterol, and high blood pressure. So my advice to you out there is you don't want this to happen. It's not fun. You have to learn how to walk again. I can't type to this day. I still can't type. So you don't want this to happen. So some people say don't pay attention to cholesterol. Pay attention to your cholesterol. It's very important. Be attentive to levels of your blood pressure, and go get checked out every now and then, because there are signs and there's certain things that will indicate that you are prone to having a stroke, right? So be very aware of this, particularly when you get in your 50s. I don't think many people in their 40s have strokes, although it's happened. And some people with COVID are getting strokes younger, which is very tragic. I know Sharon Stone had a very similar stroke to mine when she was like 50, 51. And it took her 7 years to recover. It'll probably take me 7 years to get fully back to where I was. I'm hoping I'll get back to where I was. So it can happen when you're in your early 50s. It happened to me when I was in my late 50s. So when you get in your 50s, be very cautious about this. Get your cholesterol checked. Get also your blood checked out for how thick your blood is. You know, people take statins to get their blood kind of thinner so it flows more easily. There are more other products on the market, but you want to make sure that your blood isn't too viscous, that it's flowing well, etc. So be aware of this, because I guarantee you it's the last thing you want to happen to your life. It's a major, major fuck up. You know, it just has set me back in so many areas. although I've learned a lot from it, and there is a good side to it. It's taught me some very important lessons, and I'm extremely grateful to be alive, because a few things have gone wrong. I would decide to go for lunch that day by myself, or I had decided to go see my sister in Oregon, which I was supposed to do, to fly on that day to Oregon. And 2 days before, I canceled it because I was feeling exhausted. I wouldn't be here. I'd be dead, quite honestly. So I'm grateful to even be here talking to you, Brad. So that's a good side. It makes me look outside and go, wow, I can hear the birds chirping, the sun is shining. I'm alive. Yay. So there's good things to it. But generally, don't let it happen to you is my final word.
Well, I'm glad you are alive as well. Like, I'm looking forward to this book coming up. Folks, if you guys want to follow this cat, Robert Greene Official on social media, you can't miss him. Just Google Robert Greene, Greene, and just put in power, and he comes up everywhere. Robert, I really thank you for your time today. I know you said an hour, so I'm going to let you go, but if I can do anything for you in the future, let me know. And for all the listeners out there, go pick up these books, and as always, keep it real.
Dropping bombs with the real Brad Lea. Subscribe now.